The knock on my door was so faint I thought it was the wind, until I opened it and saw golden eyes, ears twitching, and a tail trembling with fear. Snow fell in lazy spirals outside the old timber cabin, burying the world in silence. The woods stretched endless and cold, but inside the cabin's walls was warmth, wood smoke, iron kettle, the quiet company of a man long used to solitude. Jack Callan, ex-soldier, ex-mechanic, ex-everything, had carved out a quiet life here, his laughter echoing only off the crackling fire and the creak of pine beams. That was before the knock came. Not a firm rap, just a fragile tap, like someone afraid to be heard. Jack opened the door. And there she was. A woman, or something close, a mane of fiery hair dusted with snow, tall black-tipped ears pressed flat with fear, a tattered coat barely hiding the fur at her wrists, and the brush of a great tail curling protectively behind her. Her eyes were sharp gold, but wide with hunger, cold, and something deeper, shame. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "I need help." Jack leaned his weight against the cabin doorframe, one hand on the wood, the other resting on his belt like he had all the time in the world. The snow hissed past his boots, wind tugging at his stubble-rough face, but his blue eyes only narrowed at the sight in front of him. "Well," he drawled, lips curling into a half-smirk. "If it isn't Santa's fox-eared helper. You're a long way from the toy workshop, sweetheart." The woman flinched, her ears flattening further, and Jack immediately felt the pang of guilt, but he didn't show it. Teasing was his armor, the way he kept from sounding too serious, too exposed. She shivered, hugging herself with claw-tipped fingers half hidden by ripped gloves. I don't know where else to go." Her voice broke, cracking like ice under weight. "I was hunting. Got separated. The storm came in, and I couldn't find my way back." Her tail wrapped tight around her legs like rope, tip twitching nervously. She stared at the ground as if ashamed to be seen, snowflakes melting against lashes far too long for her own good. "Hunting, huh?" Jack tilted his head, studying her. "You don't exactly look like you came back with a prize. Unless you mean you've been hunting me." Her golden eyes shot up at him, startled. "I wasn't—" she started, words tumbling, then bit them off, cheeks coloring under the frost. "I was hunting deer. For my clan." Her tones sank to a whisper. "I was supposed to meet them. But when I finally found the clearing, they were gone. I think—" her throat worked hard before she forced it out. "I think they left without me." Jack's smirk softened, just a fraction. That explained it, the desperation in her knock, the way she looked at him like a cornered animal that hadn't decided whether to fight or flee. He rubbed his jaw, then stepped back from the door. "Well, good news for you, I've got heat, food, and an empty chair. Bad news is I also snore like a dying chainsaw and tell awful jokes. Still interested?" The foxwoman blinked at him, clearly unsure if he was mocking her. But the warmth spilling out of the cabin, the golden glow of firelight, the faint smell of venison stew still simmering, pulled at her like gravity. She hesitated only a moment before stepping in. Inside, the cabin was simple, a wide hearth with crackling logs, shelves stacked with jars and tins, an old rifle propped against the wall. Jack shut the door behind her, stomping snow off his boots. He tossed her a blanket from the chair. She caught it, but her movements were clumsy, like her fingers had grown stiff from cold. She wrapped it around her shoulders, fingers twitching as the heat began to sink in. "Sit," Jack said, nodding toward the table. "Before you topple over like a frozen log. You look half dead." "I'm not." She started, then sat down anyway, pulling the blanket tighter. Jack busied himself at the hearth, ladling stew into a bowl. He dropped it in front of her with a spoon, leaning on the table. "Eat. Unless your people have some rule about human food turning you into a pumpkin." She stared at the steam curling up, then at him, suspicious. But the smell hit her, rich meat, carrots, herbs, and instinct won. She bent over the bowl, hands trembling as she shoveled the first bite. The sound she made was quiet but raw, like relief given voice. Jack chuckled. "Guess that answers that." Not a pumpkin yet. She glared at him over the rim of the spoon, cheeks coloring again. I was hungry, that's all. Hungry, cold, and abandoned. Jack leaned back, folding his arms. Hell of a trifecta. Her ears flicked at the word. They didn't abandon me. She said it too quickly, like if she spoke fast enough it might be true. The storm was too harsh. They couldn't wait. I'll find them again. Jack raised an eyebrow. In a blizzard, with no trail left, half frozen, and with your belly eating itself? Sure. Sounds like a solid plan. Her spoon stilled. For a moment, her pride warred with the truth. Then her shoulders sagged. She muttered into the stew. Maybe I don't have a plan. Jack grinned, though it wasn't unkind. Lucky for you, I'm full of plans. And bad ideas. We'll start with you not dying tonight. After that, we'll see. A silence stretched, filled only by the pop of the fire and her quiet eating. Jack watched her from the corner of his eye. The way her ears twitched at every creak of the cabin. The way she hunched slightly, as if trying to make herself small despite the proud arc of her tail behind her. When she finally set the spoon down, cheeks pink with warmth, she whispered, Why are you helping me? Jack scratched his beard, smirking. What, you expected me to toss you back out in the snow? I may be a crank, but I'm not heartless. Besides, he let his grin spread, leaning in just enough to make her flinch. You've got great ears. Be ashamed to let them freeze off. Her mouth opened, opened again. No words came, just a faint flush that spread to the tips of her ears. She tugged the blanket higher, hiding half her face. Jack laughed outright, the sound rich and unbothered. Relax. I'm kidding. Mostly. That night, she curled on the cot he'd set near the fire, still wrapped in the blanket, tail draped like a living quilt. Jack sat in his old chair, sipping from a battered mug, watching the snowstorm batter against the window. She stirred once, eyes half-lidded, and murmured, If they're gone, if they left me, then I really don't have anywhere else to go. Jack's grin faded. He stared into his mug, then at her. Then I guess, he said softly, you're stuck with me. Her ears twitched, and though her cheeks burned red, she didn't argue. Not that night. Morning broke slow and gray, the storm spent but leaving the world outside smothered in white. Jack stirred awake with the old aches in his shoulders and knees reminding him he wasn't 20 anymore. He rolled out of his chair with a grunt, the fire still glowing faintly in the hearth. The first thing he saw was her. Curled tight on the cot, ears flicking even in sleep, tail puffed and coiled around her like a blanket. Her fiery hair spilled across the pillow in a tangle, snow still crusted in a few stubborn strands. She looked less like a wild stranger and more like something fragile that the storm had dropped at his door. Jack snorted softly to himself. Fragile, huh? She's got claws sharp enough to gut me if she wanted. Still, he found himself moving quieter than usual, not wanting to wake her. He was halfway through stoking the fire when her ears twitched again, and those golden eyes blinked open. She sat up sharply, tail bristling until she realized where she was. Oh. Her voice was rough with sleep. I'm still here. Jack grinned, tossing another log onto the flames. Yeah, unless you dreamed up my cooking. Which would be weird, because nobody dreams about my cooking. That earned him the faintest twitch at the corner of her lips, though she quickly smothered it. She drew the blanket tighter, sitting stiffly. Do you remember your name, or do I just keep calling you Snow Fox? Jack asked, reaching for the coffee pot. Her ears flicked upright, indignant. I have a name. Well? Don't keep me guessing. Celira. She hesitated, as though unsure if telling him was wise. Jack repeated it slowly, tasting the sound. Celira. Fancy. Mine's Jack. Just Jack. No tail, no ears, no tragic snowstorm backstory. Boring as they come. Celira glanced away, the faint flush in her cheeks betraying she wasn't used to banter. Your backstory doesn't sound boring. You live alone in the woods? Correction. Jack said, setting mugs on the table. I lived alone. Until a Redford blizzard victim showed up on my porch. He pointed at her tail with a cocked eyebrow. Don't look at me like that. You take up half the room with that thing. Her tail instinctively curled tighter around her legs. It's not my fault. Jack slid a steaming mug toward her. Never said it was. Just makes the place feel less empty. She blinked at that, ears flicking uncertainly, but she accepted the mug. The way her hands wrapped around it, like it was the first real warmth she'd had in days, made Jack's grin fade just a little. By midday, Selira was pacing by the window, tail twitching with restless energy. If I could just find a trail, maybe I could still catch them. Jack didn't look up from cleaning his rifle. Sure. You'll chase tracks buried under 3 feet of snow, in woods that'd swallow you whole, with no food. Brilliant plan, sweetheart. She spun on him, eyes flashing. Don't call me that. Jack smirked. What, sweetheart? You'd prefer Snow Fox again? Her ears went flat, and she opened her mouth to argue, but her stomach growled loud enough to echo in the cabin. She froze. Jack burst out laughing, setting the rifle aside. Oh, that's rich. The mighty huntress, silenced by her own belly. Selira's face burned red, and she turned away, tail lashing. I was distracted yesterday. Distracted? Jack raised a brow as he stirred the pot on the hearth. By what? My good looks? My charming personality? The way her ears twitched told him he'd hit a nerve. She muttered something too soft to hear, hiding her face in the blanket again. Jack chuckled. Relax, I'm messing with you. Mostly. Here, eat. Over the next days, a rhythm formed. Jack hunted with traps and an old rifle, while Selira helped by skinning hides and mending clothes with surprising skill. She never admitted it, but her hands were steadier at sewing than his clumsy mitts had ever been. Still, her instincts betrayed her in ways that amused him endlessly. Like the time he caught her sniffing the air when he carried in fresh firewood. You checking for smoke, or do I just smell that good? Jack asked with a grin. Selira jolted, ears shooting upright. I wasn't sniffing you. Sure looked like it. I was just making sure the wood was dry, she stammered, cheeks scarlet. Jack leaned closer, lowering his voice. Careful, Selira. You keep sniffing around me like that, people are gonna think you've gone sweet on me. She gaped at him, spluttering, then turned away so fast her tail smacked the table and nearly sent a mug flying. Jack laughed so hard he had to catch his breath. But there were softer moments too. One evening, after a day of trudging through snow for traps, Jack noticed Selira curled on the cot again, shivering even under layers of fur and blankets. Without a word, he tossed his old wool coat over her. She peeked out, blinking. You'll be cold. I'm always cold, Jack said with a grin, settling into his chair. Comes with being old, grumpy, and single. Don't worry about me. Her tail flicked once, hesitating, before it slowly uncurled and draped halfway across the floor, until the tip brushed his boot. Not by accident, he could feel the deliberate weight of it. Jack looked down, then back up at her. Selira's face was half hidden, but her ears were tipped crimson at the ends. Careful, Jack murmured with a sly smile. You keep doing things like that, people are gonna think you like me. I do not, she snapped, muffled by the blanket. Jack chuckled, leaning back with his mug. Sure you don't, sweetheart. Sure you don't. That night, long after Selira had drifted into uneasy sleep, Jack sat awake by the fire, staring into the flames. She was proud, timid, stubborn, and lonely in a way he recognized. Maybe she didn't want to admit how much she needed someone. Maybe either of them did. But the way her tail had brushed his boot lingered in his thoughts, warm against the cold. The storm eased into a pale blue calm over the next days. Snow still clung thick to the cabin roof, icicles glittering like glass teeth, but the woods quieted into a stillness that felt almost gentle. Inside, though, things were less peaceful. Selira! Jack barked, coughing as smoke poured from the stove. What the hell are you doing to my frying pan? Selira stood at the hearth, ears flat, eyes wide, spatula in hand. The blackened remains of something that might have once been pancakes hissed like tar. I was trying to cook, she stammered. Her tail thrashed behind her, knocking into a chair leg. You said if I'm staying here, I should help. Sweetheart, Jack wheezed, fanning the smoke with his hand. There's helping, and then there's committing war crimes against breakfast. Her ears shot upright in outrage. It's not that bad. Jack jabbed a fork into the charred mess, lifting it until it cracked like a stone. He gave her a flat look. This thing could stop bullets. Selira's cheeks went crimson. I'm learning. Jack set the fork down and smirked. Learning how to kill me in my sleep, maybe. Don't worry, I'll put death by pancake on my tombstone. That earned him a growl, low and frustrated. But instead of snapping back, she slumped, staring at the ruined pan. I just wanted to try. Jack's grin softened. He leaned a hip against the table, arms folded. Hey! Effort counts. Next time, we'll try it together, before you summon the fire brigade. Selira peeked at him through her hair, the corner of her mouth twitching despite herself. Together? Yeah, Jack said. I'll even let you flip one. If you promise not to burn the cabin down. Her tail flicked once, betraying her amusement, even as she muttered, I'll try. That evening, Jack caught her outside near the woodpile. She was standing still in the snow, golden eyes sweeping the tree line. Her ears were perked, alert, but her tail drooped low, the fur weighed down by frost. You hear something? Jack asked, rifle slung over his shoulder. She startled, then shook her head. No. I was just hoping. Maybe they'd come back for me. Jack let the silence stretch. He'd learned enough about soldiers, strays, and lost causes to recognize the weight in her voice. You really think they left you? He asked quietly. Selira's hands clenched at her sides. We move in packs. Always. That's how we survive. But when I went back to the clearing, her throat worked, ears trembling. There was nothing. Not even tracks. The storm covered everything. If they'd waited, they'd be frozen too. Jack exhaled slowly, his breath steaming in the cold. So you think they cut their losses? Her voice cracked. Yes. Jack shifted his rifle against the wall, stepping closer. He reached out and gave her shoulder a light squeeze. Then to hell with them. Their loss. Her eyes widened at the warmth in his tone. She stared at him as if searching for mockery, but found none. He grinned to break the moment. Besides, you've already upgraded. Those guys didn't have my cooking. Selira huffed, tail twitching despite her tears. Your cooking isn't that good. Hey now. Jack held a hand over his chest. You wound me. After all the love I put into that venison stew? You burned the bread. He chuckled. Details, details. Later, while the fire roared, Selira sat curled on the rug, tail stretched toward the flames like a living fan. Jack lounged in his chair, sipping coffee, watching her ears flick with every snap of the logs. You know, he said lazily, I think your tail's got a mind of its own. Selira stiffened, glancing back. It does not. Sure does. Saw it wag earlier when you got that stew. He smirked. Like a dog. Her ears shot flat. Not a dog. Fine, a very judgmental cat then. Her eyes narrowed. You're making fun of me. Sweetheart, I wouldn't dream of it. He leaned forward, grin widening. But it's hard not to notice when your tail's tattling on you. She turned so quickly her hair whipped her cheeks, face flaming red. It's just instinct. Instinct, huh? Jack set his mug down, smirking. Funny thing about instincts, they usually point toward what you want. Selira pulled the blanket up to her nose, glaring at him from behind it. Her tail lashed once, then curled around her tightly as if hiding it from view. Jack chuckled, leaning back. Don't worry. Your secret's safe. For now. But when he went to bed that night, Jack found something that made his grin linger long after the fire dimmed. On the edge of the cot, where Selira had slept, a single thread of fiery red fur lay tangled in his old wool coat. She'd pulled it close around herself while he wasn't looking. And for some reason, he didn't mind at all. The next morning dawned crisp, sunlight finally breaking through the endless gray. It poured through the frosted windows, spilling across the wooden floorboards and warming the air enough that Jack left the door cracked while he chopped firewood. Inside, Selira wandered the cabin like a restless fox pacing her den. Her tail swept behind her in lazy arcs, until it smacked Jack square in the chest as he stepped back inside. "Whoa!" Jack barked, stumbling against the table. The armload of logs clattered onto the floor. "Sweetheart, you trying to knock me flat?" Selira whirled around, mortified. It wasn't on purpose." Her ears shot upright, then flattened. "My tail just..." Jack smirked, dusting off his shirt. "Has a mind of its own, huh?" "I knew it." Her cheeks burned scarlet. "Stop saying that." "Oh, come on." He grinned, leaning against the doorframe. "You're dangerous enough with claws. Add a tail whip and you're practically a weapon system." Selira clutched the blanket around her shoulders, tail curling tight as if hiding from his teasing. "You're impossible. And you're clumsy." Jack bent, gathering the fallen logs. "But don't worry, I like clumsy. Keeps life interesting." By afternoon, the cabin was thick with the smell of stew again. Selira sat by the fire, carefully stitching one of Jack's ripped shirts with thread she'd spun from the fur of a rabbit pelt. Her movements were quick, precise, far more graceful than she gave herself credit for. Jack leaned back in his chair, watching with a lazy smile. "Not bad. You sure you weren't secretly raised in a tailor shop?" She didn't look up, ears twitching. "We make what we wear. Everyone in the clan knows how. Guess I'll have the best dressed shirts in the woods, then." He reached over, tugging at the hem of the fabric as she worked. "Careful, though. If you keep spoiling me, I'll get used to it." Selira's eyes flicked up, cheeks pink. "You're already spoiled. You make me cook, mend, fetch water." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Hey now. You nearly burned the house down with breakfast, remember? I'm protecting my cabin from pancake-related disasters." That pulled a reluctant laugh from her, light and soft. She quickly hid it behind her hand, but Jack caught the sound and let it hang in the warm air like victory. That night, as snow glittered faintly outside, Jack returned from hauling in firewood to find Selira asleep again, this time on the rug before the hearth instead of the cot. Her blanket had slipped off one shoulder, golden eyes closed, her tail curled protectively over her body like a shield. Jack crouched down, adjusting the blanket over her. For a moment, her hand twitched, fingers brushing his wrist before retreating. Her ears flicked even in sleep. She mumbled something, words slurred but audible. "Don't want to go." Jack froze, staring at her. His hand lingered near hers before he pulled back, settling into his chair. She stirred, tail twitching, but didn't wake. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, eyes on the ceiling beams. "Don't want to go, huh? Guess I'm not the only one getting used to this arrangement." The next day, Jack decided to push his luck. He came inside with an armful of kindling and found Selira perched at the table, gnawing thoughtfully on the end of a pencil, his old notebook open in front of her. "Don't tell me you're learning to write human," he said, dropping the wood into the box. Selira jolted, slamming the notebook shut, ears flaming. "I was just..." "Just what?" Jack grinned. "Writing love letters? Practicing your signature for when you steal my land deed?" Her glare could have melted ice. "It's not funny." "Then what were you scribbling?" He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Confessions of a snow fox in love with her rugged rescuer?" Her tail lashed like a whip, knocking the mug off the table. It clattered to the floor, spilling cold tea across the boards. Selira shot to her feet, flustered beyond words, tail puffed out like a banner of embarrassment. "Why, you're insufferable!" Jack crouched, mopping the spill with a rag, laughing under his breath. "Maybe. But admit it, sweetheart, life'd be boring without me." Selira stood frozen, cheeks burning, ears trembling. She turned sharply, muttering, "Life was boring before you." The words slipped out before she realized what she'd said. Her eyes widened in horror, tail wrapping tight around her legs. Jack straightened slowly, grin tugging at his lips. He didn't say anything, just let the silence draw out, his gaze fixed on her until she bolted for the door, muttering about needing air. Later, when the cabin was quiet again, Jack sat by the fire with his mug, smirking into the flames. "Life was boring before me, huh?" he murmured to himself. "Guess I'll take that as a compliment." Outside, he caught the faintest glimpse of red fur flicking past the window, her tail, restless even in the cold. And for once, Jack didn't crack a joke. He just sat back, letting the warmth settle deep. The woods had gone too quiet. Jack noticed it first while checking his traps. No rustle of rabbits, no caw of crows, not even the distant crack of branches from deer moving through snow. The silence pressed heavy, unnatural. He frowned, tightening the strap on his rifle as he trudged back to the cabin. But Selira noticed faster. The moment he stepped inside, she was crouched low near the fire, ears pressed flat, tail puffed wide like a warning banner. Her golden eyes snapped to the door as if she'd been waiting. "What's wrong?" Jack asked, setting the rifle against the wall. Her nostrils flared, pupils narrowing to slits. "It's here." Jack paused. "What's here?" She swallowed hard. "A predator." Her voice was tight, strained. "They hunt us. They..." Her tail lashed once, betraying panic. "It's close." Jack frowned, rubbing the stubble along his jaw. "Big predators don't usually wander this far up the ridge. Too quiet, too cold." Her ears flicked back sharply. "Not this one. This one follows vulpine. It knows my scent." That made Jack stop. He raised a brow. "Knows your scent, huh? So what, you smell so good you've got suitors lining up, even the four-legged kind?" Normally, that would have earned him a sputtering denial, a fiery blush, maybe even a tail whip to the ribs. But Selira didn't even twitch. Her eyes locked on the window, wide and shining with fear. Jack's grin faltered. He stepped closer, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Hey! Don't spiral on me. We'll deal with it." "You don't understand," Selira whispered, voice trembling. "If it comes here, it's because of me. I brought danger to your door. If you get hurt..." Jack cut her off with a sharp snort. "Sweetheart, I've been knee-deep in danger longer than you've been sewing pelts. Don't sweat it." He reached for the rifle again, checking the chamber with practiced ease. "Animals wander. I deal with them all the time." Selira's ears twitched, disbelief etched into her face. "Not like this one. This one won't stop. It smells me, and it won't let go." Jack slung the rifle over his shoulder, smirk tugging at his lips even as his eyes sharpened. "Then I'll just have to convince it I'm the scarier one." Her tail lashed in agitation. "You don't joke about this. Please." Jack paused, really looking at her. Her hands trembled against the blanket, claws barely sheathed, breath shallow. Not pride this time, not stubbornness, pure, instinctive fear. His voice softened. "All right. No jokes then." He knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes level. "You trust me?" Her ears twitched, eyes darting to the rifle, then back to his face. "I do." "Good," Jack said simply. He rose, cracking the cabin door to peer into the snow-laden woods. "Then let me do my job." The night crept in slow, moonlight spilling across the drifts outside. Jack kept the fire low, not wanting the smoke to draw attention. He sat near the door with rifle across his knees, every sense stretched taut. Selira hovered close by, restless, tail wrapped tight around her legs. Every snap of ice outside made her ears flick, her breath hitch in her throat. Finally, Jack spoke, voice low but steady. "Tell me about it. What am I looking for?" Her throat bobbed. "Tall. Lean. Walks on four until it smells blood, then it rises. Eyes pale. Teeth long enough to pierce bone in one bite." Her voice faltered. "It hunts us in packs. But even one? She shuddered. Jack scratched his jaw thoughtfully. Sounds like one ugly bastard. She shot him a look, half horror, half disbelief. This isn't funny. I know, he said, surprisingly gentle. But I'm not about to sit here shaking in my boots. I've faced worse. You'll see. Selira wrapped her arms around herself, voice barely audible. If it finds me, it won't stop until one of us is dead. Jack adjusted his rifle, eyes glinting as he glanced at her. Then it better hope it's faster than my trigger finger. Hours stretched, the silence outside pressing heavier. Selira eventually sank to the rug, too restless to sit still, her golden eyes fixed on the door. Jack stayed in his chair, steady as stone, but inside he felt the tension creep into his shoulders. Every instinct told him this wasn't going to be a normal night. But when he looked over at Selira, ears trembling, tail twitching, every muscle taut with terror, he felt something else rise above the tension. A stubborn, reckless certainty. If this thing wanted her, it was going to have to come through him first. And Jack Callan didn't lose what he'd already decided to protect. The silence shattered with the crunch of snow. Jack froze by the doorframe, rifle angled toward the window. His eyes narrowed, scanning the treeline. At first, he thought it was a trick of shadows, then it stepped into the moonlight. It was bigger than he expected. Its shoulders rippled as it stalked on all fours, pale hide glinting like stretched leather, eyes reflecting silver in the night. The thing's head swung low, nostrils flaring, and the glint of jagged teeth caught the glow of the moon. Son of a... Jack muttered under his breath. They're bigger than I thought up close. Only ever seen 'em far out across the ridge. Behind him, Selira made a sound that wasn't human at all, a whimper, small and sharp. Jack glanced back. Her ears were pressed flat, tail bush so wide it scraped against the floorboards. Her hands trembled where they clutched the blanket to her chest, claws pricking through the fabric. In that moment she looked less like the proud, stubborn woman he'd teased for days, and more like a cornered fox, every instinct screaming run. Jack opened his mouth, smirk ready, something about her tail taking up more space than him even in a crisis. Then Selira's voice cracked through the air. Those beasts killed my people. The joke died in his throat. Jack stared at her, really stared. The raw terror in her golden eyes, the grief she tried to hide, all crashing to the surface. She wasn't exaggerating. She'd seen this thing tear her kind apart. Slowly, Jack shut the cabin door, bolting it. He moved without a word, crossing the room. Selira flinched when he dropped to one knee beside the bed, shoving it aside with a grunt. His hand found the crate tucked beneath. Metal hinges creaked as he threw it open. Selira's ears perked, eyes widening at the gleam inside. Not a hunter's rifle. A weapon of war. Jack lifted it out with practiced ease, brushing dust from the long barrel. Matte black, military issue, with the kind of modifications you didn't find at a hunting shop. He checked the chamber, then pulled free a box of loaded magazines, sliding one home with a clean click. I was saving this for a rainy day, he muttered, lips quirking though his eyes stayed sharp. Guess this counts. Selira's mouth opened soundlessly. You. Military, Jack said simply, running his hand along the rifle like greeting an old friend. Back in the day. Haven't needed this in a long time. Her throat worked as she stared at him, bewildered. You fight things like this? Jack smirked, slinging the rifle over his shoulder. Sweetheart, I've fought things that make this look like a stray mutt. He winked. Difference is, back then I got paid for it. Selira stared, torn between disbelief and desperate hope. For once, she didn't argue. Instead, she whispered, Please don't die because of me. Jack chuckled low, though his grip tightened on the rifle. Don't plan on it. The creature prowled closer, breath fogging in great white plumes. Jack crouched by the window, steadying the rifle against the sill. He watched it sniff the snow, muscles rippling under its pale hide, its claws carving furrows in the ice. Behind him, Selira crept toward the window, drawn despite herself. Her tail twitched with every step, her fears so sharp it filled the air like static. She dared a glance. The predator's head jerked up. Its glowing eyes locked on hers. Salira gasped, ducking back so fast she slammed against the wall, tail bristling like fire. "It's seen me!" Her voice shook, every syllable trembling. "It knows!" Jack glanced back at her, calm in a way that made her shiver. He smirked faintly, the same cocky grin she'd come to expect, though his eyes burned cold and serious. "Well," he said, checking the sights, "guess we don't have much of a choice now." Salira's breath hitched. Can you fight it?" Jack looked at her, then at the door where the beast's shadow stretched long across the snow. His smirk softened into something steadier. "Sweetheart," he said, voice low and certain, "I've seen, and killed, way worse in my younger years." He cocked the rifle, the sound sharp in the cabin's silence. "Trust me." Outside, the beast roared, snow exploding under its claws as it lunged toward the cabin. Jack's hand closed on the latch, his rifle already braced against his shoulder. He gave Salira a quick, crooked grin, cocky, reckless, and infuriatingly calm. "Stay back, sweetheart. This one's mine." He flung the door open. The night air blasted in, sharp and freezing, carrying the stench of blood and rot. The beast crouched low in the snow only a dozen paces away, pale eyes burning like cold fire. Jack stepped into the doorway, planting his boots firm. "Hey, ugly!" he bellowed. "You picked the wrong cabin!" The beast shrieked and charged. Jack squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared like thunder, deafening in the confined space of the cabin. Salira clapped her hands over her ears with a startled cry, her tail puffing in shock as the weapon spat fire. The round tore through the beast's side, ripping flesh and muscle in a spray of white and red. The creature staggered, snarled, but did not fall. Its claws dug trenches in the snow as it lunged again. Salira gasped. She'd heard whispers, rumors of human weapons, of their impossible fury, but never seen it. Her heart hammered against her ribs, both in terror of the beast and of the man standing in the doorway like he owned the battlefield. Jack grinned, teeth flashing in the moonlight. "Stubborn bastard, ain't it?" The rifle barked again, another deafening blast. Salira flinched hard, jumping back as the walls shook. Smoke filled the doorway, acrid and sharp. The second round found its mark, straight through the skull. The beast's head snapped back, a wet crack echoing as half of it vanished in a spray of bone and gore. The body skidded in the snow, momentum carrying it nearly to Jack's boots before it collapsed, twitching once, twice, then falling still. The night went silent again. Jack stood in the doorway, rifle still shouldered, eyes locked on the fallen beast. His breath misted in the cold, his fingers steady on the trigger. For a long moment he didn't move, like he was waiting for someone to shout orders, waiting for the next wave. Salira stared, wide-eyed, frozen between awe and fear. Finally, Jack exhaled. He lowered the rifle, rolling his shoulders as though shaking off an old memory. "Well," he muttered, "that's that." He turned, smirk tugging at his lips. "You all right in there, Snow Fox?" Salira's ears flicked, golden eyes fixed on the weapon in his hands. Her gaze dropped lower, tracing the faint engraving near the stock, a jagged emblem she'd seen before. Not in person, but in stories whispered by her elders. Her breath caught. That mark! That sound! That ferocity! Her voice shook, tail bristling. "You're one of them." Jack raised a brow. "One of who?" Her throat bobbed. "A Deathworlder." The word hung in the cabin like a curse. For a moment, Salira looked at him differently, not as the cocky hermit who teased her about her tale, but as something far larger, darker. Deathworlders. The name carried weight in every corner of the stars. The species who came from the planet too hostile for most life, who forged warriors like iron in fire. The species other clans warned their children about. Humans. Jack barked a laugh, slinging the rifle casually over his shoulder. "Deathworlder? Sweetheart, I'm just Jack." Salira shook her head, ears trembling. "No. You can't be just Jack." I've heard the stories. Your kind don't fight. You destroy. And yet, her voice softened, uncertain. You've been so kind to me. For the first time, Jack didn't smirk. He leaned the rifle against the wall, resting a hand on the frame. His expression was calm, steady. Yeah. I know the stories. His voice was quieter now, a low rumble. Fierce fighters. Monsters of war. That's what the galaxy calls us. He paused, glancing at the beast's ruined corpse outside. They're not wrong. Salira's ears pressed flat, her tail curling tight. But that's only half the truth, Jack went on. He stepped closer, lowering his gaze to meet hers. We're not just killers. We're protectors too. Fierce protectors. Her eyes widened, the words landing heavier than any bullet. Jack shrugged, breaking the moment with a faint grin. So yeah? Maybe I'm a Deathworlder. But tonight I was just a guy making sure a friend didn't end up dinner. Salira stared at him, trembling, not from the cold, but from something tangled and confusing deep inside. Fear, yes. But also gratitude. Relief. And something else she couldn't name. Her voice cracked in a whisper. You don't make sense. Jack chuckled, moving past her to set the rifle on the table. Good. Keep you guessing. Outside, the snow covered the beast's body inch by inch, erasing the evidence, but not the memory of what Salira had seen. Inside, the cabin held its silence, broken only by the slow crackle of the fire and the pounding of two hearts. The corpse didn't last the night. By morning, scavengers had dragged it off into the woods, leaving only a crimson stain in the snow and claw marks gouged deep. Jack stood at the window with his mug of coffee, watching the crows circle overhead. Guess dinner's on someone else's table now, he muttered. Behind him, Salira hovered near the fire, tail wrapped tight, eyes still wide. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the beast's pale hide, the way its head had shattered under Jack's rifle. And every time she looked at him, her chest pulled in two directions, fear at what he was, and warmth at what he'd done for her. He'd protected her. Without hesitation. Without complaint. That truth hummed in her instincts louder than any fear. The next days passed slow, heavy with silence. The storm broke, skies clearing into cold sunlight, but Salira never strayed far from the cabin. Her tail followed Jack everywhere, brushing against him more than once as though drawn without her permission. Jack, of course, noticed. Careful there, he said with a grin one morning as she nearly tangled him up at the woodpile. You're gonna trip me with that thing. Or is that the plan, knock me down so you can have the cabin to yourself? Salira flushed scarlet, jerking her tail back. I wasn't. Relax, he teased, brushing past her to drop logs by the hearth. Just means you like keeping me close. Her ears twitched, betraying the truth. She turned away sharply, muttering. Instinct. Jack smirked. Instinct, huh? Convenient excuse. She didn't answer, but later that night, when she curled by the fire, her tail reached again, lightly brushing his boot. Jack glanced down, then at her. Salira's cheeks glowed pink in the firelight, her gaze fixed stubbornly on the flames. He chuckled softly, letting the moment pass. On the third day, Jack was cleaning his rifle when Salira crept up beside him, watching. She'd been quiet all morning, unusually so. Her hands twisted in her lap, claws lightly scoring the wood of the chair. Finally, she whispered, Why did you protect me? Jack raised a brow. Because you looked too tasty to leave to the beast. Her ears shot back, scandalized, but he winked before she could argue. Kidding. Mostly. His voice softened. Truth? Because you needed me to. That's enough. Salira's throat bobbed, golden eyes wide. But you're a Deathworlder. Just Jack. He corrected easily, snapping the rifle back together. You could have let me run. I would have let it away. Jack's grin faded. He set the weapon down, turning to face her. Not on my watch. Her instincts twisted at that, coiling tight in her chest, hot and unfamiliar. A low, needy flutter she didn't know how to hide. Her tail betrayed her again, curling around his arm where it rested on the chair. Jack blinked, then smirked. Well, that's new. Selira yanked it back with a strangled noise. I didn't mean to. Sure you didn't. He leaned back, cocky grin returning. Careful, sweetheart. Someone might think you're claiming me. Her face flamed, ears trembling, but she didn't deny it this time. Not outright. By the fifth night, something had shifted between them. Selira lingered closer when Jack cooked, her ears flicking at every word. She laughed more, quiet and embarrassed, but real. And when the wind howled through the trees, she found herself drifting toward him, tail betraying her again as it brushed against his leg for reassurance. Jack never pulled away. He only grinned, sometimes ruffling her hair with a big calloused hand. You stick close enough, sweetheart, and people think you actually like me, he teased one evening. Selira looked up at him, cheeks pink, voice small. Maybe I do. Jack froze for half a beat, caught off guard. Then he chuckled low, shaking his head. Well, hell. Guess the cabin just got a lot less boring. That night, as the fire burned low and the snow whispered outside, Selira curled near his chair, her tail coiled around his boots like an anchor. Jack watched her for a long while, his usual grin tempered by something quieter. Fierce protectors, he murmured to himself, almost too soft to hear. Selira's ears twitched, but she didn't move. And for once, Jack didn't feel the urge to make a joke. He just let the warmth of the cabin, and of her closeness, settle in deep. The days stretched into a fragile peace. The snow melted slowly into wet drifts, the woods whispering with the return of crows and hares. But inside the cabin, the quiet changed. Jack noticed it first in small ways. Selira humming under her breath while she mended his shirt, ears twitching with every note. The way her golden eyes softened when he walked in from the cold, always checking if he carried wounds. Her tail, once a banner of nervous energy, now curling around his boots like it had claimed the space, and maybe the man, too. He teased her for it, of course. You keep wrapping that tail around me, sweetheart, I'll start charging rent, he said one evening, leaning back in his chair. Selira flushed, tugging it back, but not before the corner brushed against his leg again. Instinct, she muttered. Jack grinned. Yeah? Instinct. That excuse is getting real worn out. She glared at him, cheeks glowing, then looked away, yet her tail slid back against his ankle not long after. On the seventh night, the fire burned low, the storm outside a dull whisper. Selira sat cross-legged on the rug, stitching leather with steady hands, while Jack cleaned his rifle on the table. Without looking up, she asked quietly, When the beast came, were you afraid? Jack paused, wiping down the barrel. Sure. Anyone who says they're not is lying. Fear keeps you sharp. She studied him, ears angled forward. You didn't look afraid. That's 'cause I've had practice, Jack said with a faint grin. Learned a long time ago to keep my knees from knocking in front of the scary stuff. Selira's tail twitched. She dropped her sewing, voice dropping to a whisper. I was terrified. Jack finally looked up, meeting her eyes. Yeah. I know. But you're still here. That counts for something. Her throat bobbed. If you hadn't been, I'd be dead. Jack shrugged, as if brushing off the weight of her words. Lucky for you, I'm too stubborn to let a mutt have its way. Her ears trembled. But why? You owed me nothing. My clan, my own people, left me behind. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes sharp but kind. Because someone needed to stand between you and the teeth. That's reason enough. For a long moment, silence hung thick, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Selira's gaze softened, her instincts screaming louder than her pride. She scooted closer, until her tail brushed his arm deliberately this time, not by accident. Jack blinked down at it, then up at her. Careful, sweetheart. That almost looked intentional. Her cheeks burned, but she didn't move away. Maybe it was. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. You're gonna make this place way too interesting, you know that? 2 days later, Jack found her outside by the treeline, watching the horizon with a pensive look. Her ears flicked back as he approached. You thinking about them? He asked, coming to stand beside her. Selira hesitated, then nodded. Yes. My clan. If they're alive, they're far by now. Even if I could find them. She trailed off, tail brushing the snow. Would they even want me back? Jack tilted his head, studying her. Do you want to go back? Her breath caught. She hadn't asked herself that, not out loud. She looked at him, at the scarred, stubborn man who teased her, fed her, stood between her and death. Her tail flicked once, curling subconsciously toward him. I don't know, she admitted softly. But I don't want to leave here. Jack smirked, scratching at his beard. Well, good news then. I've got more firewood than I know what to do with, and a spare cot. Could use the company. Her golden eyes softened, the tension in her shoulders melting. You really mean that? Course I do, Jack said, bumping her shoulder lightly. Besides, who else is gonna burn pancakes for me? Selira's laugh was quiet, shy, but it reached her eyes. That night, as the cabin glowed warm against the snow, Selira curled by the fire, her tail draped comfortably across Jack's boots. She didn't flinch when he looked down at it. She didn't hide. Jack leaned back in his chair, sipping from his mug, a grin tugging at his lips. Well, he said softly, looks like I've been claimed. Selira ducked her head, ears red, but her tail gave a slow, deliberate flick against his leg. Maybe you have. Jack chuckled, content to let the moment linger. Outside, the woods stretched dark and endless, dangers still roaming. But inside the cabin, warmth and laughter held firm. And for the first time in years, Jack didn't feel alone. From a knock on his cabin door to the moment her tail claimed him, their story shows that even the fiercest reputations can hide the kindest hearts. If you want to see where their bond leads next, let me know. I could make a part 2 if people like this one.